I stood on the sidewalk, drenched from head to toe in a storm I never saw coming. Not just the rain, though the sky had opened up like it was morning too, but life itself. My suitcase sat beside me, half unzipped, with my dignity tucked somewhere between a wrinkled blouse and a rejected job application. People passed by like I was invisible, eyes averted, faces cold. They saw the raincoat, the cracked shoes, the cheap umbrella that had turned inside out 3 blocks ago, and they made their decisions. No one ever wondered why someone like me stood alone in a place like this. Or maybe they did, and just didn't care. If you felt the emotion, the twists, or the warmth of love against all odds, then you're in the right place. We bring stories like this every week, and trust me, you don't want to miss the next one. Tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Drop your country in the comments, and let us know where in the world you're listening from. It brings us all a little closer together. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because your next favorite story is just one click away. The truth? I'd come here chasing a dream. I thought I'd finally landed a job that could lift me out of my tiny town. I thought I'd walk into a new life. Instead, I walked into a scam. No job, no contacts, no return ticket, and now no hope. I don't know how long I stood there, blinking away tears at the rain try to hide. My stomach growled louder than the thunder above, but no one looked. Until he did. The black SUV pulled up slowly, its tires whispering over the wet asphalt. The back door cracked open. Not fast, not urgent, just curious. I expected a driver, a tinted window, a passing stare, but instead, a man stepped out. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. He held a baby in one arm and a deep green umbrella in the other. I should have looked away. Pride said I should pretend not to notice him. But something about his stillness, the way the rain curved around his silhouette, made it impossible. He stood in front of me and said nothing for a moment. Then, softly, "Are you all right?" No one had asked me that all day. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I don't know. He studied me. Not the way people usually do when they're trying to guess if you're homeless or dangerous. He looked at me like he was trying to remember me from somewhere, or like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "You shouldn't be out here," he said, shifting the baby gently in his arm. "I don't have anywhere else to be." The baby stirred, big brown eyes blinking up at the storm. The man followed the child's gaze, then turned back to me. "Come with me." "Oh, what?" "Just for now," he said. "Just to get you dry, get you fed." I hesitated. It went against every warning I'd ever been given. But maybe desperation can tell when someone means no harm. Maybe something about the baby's sleepy yawn made me believe him. I stepped into the car. The interior of the SUV was warm, a world away from the rain-soaked reality I'd just left behind. Soft music played low, and the scent of baby powder and something woodsy, like expensive cologne, floated in the air. I sat stiffly, unsure if I should look out the window or say something. The baby cooed from his car seat, smiling up at the man who had saved me. "I'm Elias," he finally said, glancing at me as the car pulled back into the street. "And that little guy is Milo." I looked at the baby. His cheeks were plump, his skin soft like a sun-kissed peach. "Hi, Milo," I whispered. He giggled like he understood. "And you?" Elias asked. "Lana." He nodded. "Well, Lana, you look like you were about 10 minutes away from collapsing." I gave a weak smile. I probably was. We didn't talk much after that. The quiet wasn't awkward. It was safe, like we both knew something bigger was at play. After about 15 minutes, the SUV pulled into the driveway of a house I could only describe as a modern castle. Not flashy, just grand. Clean lines, tall windows, lights that made it look like a place you'd only see in a magazine. "You live here?" I asked, incredulous. "For now," Elias said, lifting Milo carefully. "We just moved in recently. Come inside. You can warm up, get something to eat." I hesitated again. "Why are you doing this?" He turned to me. holding the baby to his chest. Because once, years ago, someone helped me when I had nothing. I never forgot what it meant. Something in his voice cracked a little, but he looked away before I could ask more. The inside of the house was even more breathtaking. A spiral staircase wrapped around a wide, open living space. A fireplace glowed gently in the corner. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the rain still falling beyond, but in here, it felt like another world. He handed me a towel. "Bathroom's that way. You'll find a robe and some dry clothes inside. I'll get some food going." I nodded, unsure how I kept landing in stranger and stranger moments. A billionaire, because there was no doubt now that's what he was, had picked me up off the street and welcomed me into his home. I didn't even know his last name. I cleaned up quickly, too embarrassed to take long. The robe was soft, the kind that felt like a cloud wrapped around you. When I returned to the living room, Elias was sitting on the couch, Milo in his lap, and a tray of food on the coffee table. "I didn't know what you liked, so I kept it simple," he said. "A grilled cheese, tomato soup, and a glass of juice." It looked like a five-star version of comfort food. I didn't wait. Hunger had no pride. I took a bite and almost cried. "So," Elias said gently, "what happened?" I stared at the soup, trying to find the words. "I came here for a job. Some online recruiter said there was an assistant position at a fashion firm." It was a lie. By the time I figured it out, they'd taken everything. My savings, even my ID. He blinked, silent for a beat. "That's awful. I'm sorry. I feel so stupid." "You're not. You're just trusting. There's a difference." I looked up, surprised by how gently he said it. No judgment, just the truth. "And what about you?" I asked, pointing at Milo. "Where's his mom?" His expression dimmed, like someone had flicked off a switch behind his eyes. "She passed away last year," he said softly. "Car accident. Milo was just a few months old." My heart ached. "I'm so sorry." He nodded, lips pressed tight. "It's been hard. He's the only reason I keep going." We sat in silence after that. Not because we didn't have more to say, but because some wounds only speak in silence. That night, Elias offered me the guest room. I protested at first, something about feeling like an intruder, but he just smiled and said, "You've been through enough. Let me help." Sleep came easily, wrapped in warmth, and the gentle sound of rain tapping the windows. It was the first time in days I didn't feel afraid. The next morning, I woke to sunlight filtering through sheer curtains and the soft, unmistakable sound of a baby giggling. When I stepped out into the living room, Milo was crawling around in a tiny onesie, and Elias, dressed in a plain white t-shirt and sweatpants, was chasing after him with a toy lion. He looked up and smiled, a little sheepish. "He's an early riser." "He's cute," I said, biting back a yawn. "You're welcome to stay a few more days, you know," Elias said. "I meant what I said about helping. I don't want to take advantage," I replied, my voice hesitant. "You're not," he said. "You're just letting someone care." It took me a while to believe him. The days passed, and I found myself falling into a rhythm. I helped with Milo, feeding him, changing diapers, reading stories. Elias showed me the garden, where roses bloomed in ordered rows, and the kitchen, where we cooked simple meals together. I learned he liked jazz, and he learned I talked to plants. One afternoon, while the baby napped and I was sitting on the back patio watching the breeze dance through the trees, Elias sat beside me with 2 mugs of coffee. "You've changed the energy here," he said. I blinked. "What do you mean?" "This house, it was cold after she died. I went through the motions. For Milo. But when you walked in, wet and angry at the world, it was like something lit up again." I stared at him, unsure what to say. "I'm not saying this to scare you," he added quickly. There's something about you." I looked down at my chipped nails, my borrowed slippers. "I'm not anyone special." "You are to me," he said, voice quiet. My chest ached at the words. I'd come here with nothing. And yet, somehow, this man, This billionaire with the saddest eyes was looking at me like I was everything. I don't know what's next, I whispered, but I don't want to be alone anymore. He nodded. You don't have to be. Weeks turned into a month. I got a part-time job at a bookstore downtown. Elias refused to let me pay rent, so I contributed in other ways. Cooking, caring for Milo, bringing flowers from the market every Friday just to see him smile. One night, after putting Milo to bed, I walked into the living room to find Elias standing by the window, his silhouette lit by moonlight. I want to show you something, he said. He led me to the back of the house, where a small studio had been turned into a gallery of sorts. The walls were filled with paintings, soft, abstract swirls of grief, hope, and love. I could feel the emotion vibrating off the canvas. You painted these? I asked. He nodded. It was the only way I knew how to process everything. They're beautiful, I said, stepping closer to one that looked like the sky melting into the sea. They were about her, he said. But lately, they've started to be about you. I turned, my breath catching. He was looking at me again with that same intensity, the kind that saw straight through. Lana, he said slowly, you don't owe me anything, but I think I've fallen in love with you. Tears sprang to my eyes without warning, not from fear, but from the terrifying, overwhelming realization that I felt the same. I think I love you too, I whispered. We didn't rush anything. Our love grew in quiet moments, in the way he brushed my hair back when I was tired, in the way I sang softly to Milo when he couldn't sleep. We laughed together. He cried once, remembering a song she used to sing, and I just held him. There were still scars. I had nightmares. He had guilt, but love made space for both. One afternoon, as the sun spilled across the garden and Milo waddled through the grass chasing butterflies, Elias took my hand. Marry me, he said simply. I laughed through my tears. You're supposed to ask with a ring. He pulled one from his pocket, simple and elegant, the kind that didn't scream wealth but whispered promise. Then let me do it right. He knelt in the grass. Milo squealed nearby. Lana, he said, you walked into my life like a storm, wet, furious, and completely unexpected. But you saved me in ways I didn't even know I needed saving. Will you marry me? I nodded, heart thundering. Yes, 1,000 times yes. We got married under the magnolia tree in the backyard. Just us, Milo, and a few close friends. I wore a simple white dress. Elias wore the same soft smile he'd worn the first night I stepped into his SUV. Milo, now walking confidently, brought us the rings. Later that night, as we danced beneath string lights in a sky full of stars, Elias leaned in and whispered, "Thank you for getting rained on that day." I laughed. "Thank you for stopping." And in that moment, I knew some stories didn't start with fairy tales or perfect beginnings. Some started with rejection, with pain, with standing in the rain with nothing but a broken umbrella and a bruised heart. But they ended in love, and that was more than enough. If you felt the emotion, the twists, or the warmth of love against all odds, then you're in the right place. We bring stories like this every day, and trust me, you don't want to miss the next one. Tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Drop your country in the comments, and let us know where in the world you're listening from. It brings us all a little closer together. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because your next favorite story is just one click away. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Now go ahead, subscribe, comment, and stay curious.